Let's see if that'll work for us. All right, so welcome to our flower pot class today. And we are going to be making this cute little card with whatever supplies you have at home, whether you've got stickers for your flowers or you've got the paper flowers like I do, or if you've die cut them, any kind of flower is going to do. I've also incorporated a little birdie here on my flower pot. These come from our set of 3D toppers. This set has, looks like 9 different flowers. And I've got a really pretty one to use on my card this afternoon too. So I'll show you how those work. I'm going to be using the amethyst papers from Papercrafter, including these beautiful flowers that they have, and also some of the die cuts and embellishments. If you want to see how absolutely stunning this paper is, just look at those colors. There's butterflies. It looks like a watercolor dream. So, so pretty. Little bit of foil on that 6x6 pad, more butterflies. And then the 6x6 pad also has little cut aparts and punch outs at the back. We also have some 12x12 individual sheets as well as the 12x12 collection pack. Alrighty, so let's get started. You want to start by grabbing a piece of cardstock and you want to trim it down to 4 inches by 8.5 inches. So that's 4 inches by 8.5. I think I already did this one at 4. Yeah, so 8.5 means I'm trimming off 3.5. If I did my math right. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, perfect. So you have a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 long by 4 inches wide. We're going to do a little bit of scoring on that. So grab your scoreboards. Now, if you have the big 12x12 scoreboard, which I left mine at home, your scoring measurements are going to be at 3.5 inches and then at 7 inches. So on mine here, because I don't go all the way to 7, I'm going to do 3.5. And just be careful you don't push too hard. You're better off going over it a couple of times instead of pushing all the way through. On my sample one, you can't see it really close, but I did punch through mine a little bit. So yeah, Matt's tisking me here. And then I'm going to do, so this is 8.5. I want 7, which is 1.5. So you have a score line at 3.5 and then a score line at 7. And we're going to fold in a Z pattern. So you're going to fold that one behind and you're going to fold this one forward, because this is going to be the little cuff or the little bevel part of our flower pot here. Now, if you've got really pretty cardstock or if you wanted to use pattern paper for this as well, you absolutely could. I use cardstock to give it a little bit of extra weight, and then I'm going to put some pattern paper on that. So if you're following along and want to do the same thing as I am, you're next going to pick a piece of pattern paper and you're going to cut it at 3 3/4 inch by, 3 3/4 by 3 1/4. So 3 1/4 is the height, 3 3/4 is the width. And I'm going to use this beautiful watercolory paper here. So let's do, my height is 3 1/4. And my width is 3 3/4. You also want a little strip to go here on your cuff. That piece is going to be 3 3/4 by 1. So I'm going to use this paper here. I'm going to do a 1-inch strip. And then trim it down to 3 3/4 as well. So That's a little scrappy scrap. Put those
Hi, Sheri.
Yes.
Is it possible for you to give us the dimensions again, please?
Absolutely. So the main cardstock is 4 inches wide by 8.5 inches long.
Okay, yeah.
You're going to score it at 3.5 and at 7.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. On our pattern piece here, and where did I tuck mine? Did I accidentally tuck mine off as scrap? I did. So the first little pattern piece that's going to go here on your flower pot, it is 3 3/4 wide by 3 1/4 tall.
Okay.
And your little strip is 3 3/4 wide by 1 inch tall.
Okay, thank you.
No problem at all. So I'm going to put my scoreboard away. I'm going to move my sample off to the side. And when I say put it away, just tuck it off to the side. We may need it later, we may not. So the next thing we have to do is, if you notice on our little template, in order to make it look like a flower pot, we're going to cut the sides on a little bit of an angle in order to create that flower pot shape. So what I have done, or what I did on my sample one, is I've folded it along that score line, and then using my grid paper, I'm going to mark in 1/2 inch from either side. You can use a ruler, you can use whatever measuring device you have, but you want just a little tick mark at the 1/2 inch from either side. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it super well. No, probably not. But just know that it's 1/2 inch from either outside edge. Leaving it folded, but making sure that this flap is up, not down. I'm going to use my trimmer, and I'm going to line up that little tick mark at the bottom with where my blade is going to cut. And I'm going to line up that corner where that score line is, so that I can cut off a little triangle, like so. So you're just trimming off that little sliver of triangle from the one side. Then you're going to flip it to the other side and do the exact same thing. So from this little tick mark up to the corner where the score line is. Make sure I've got that right. And slice it down. Now we've got that flower pot shape starting to take place. The other thing that I did on my sample one that I'm also going to do on this one, if I can find my punch, is, oh, here it is right in front of me. I'm going to do a scalloped punch right along this edge, so that it just gives a really pretty finish to your little collar on your flower pot. If you don't have a border punch, or if you don't want to do this, it's totally optional. You could tear it, you can round the corners, anything that you feel will give it a nice little finish to your pot. So I'm just going to punch this out. And down the other side. Get rid of my little scrappy scraps. So there is our pot pre-decoration. We're going to do that same triangle technique with our pattern piece that's going to go on the bottom. So I've got my pattern piece here. I want to do 1/2 inch from the left side, and then 1/2 inch from the right side. And once again, just from that little tick mark up to the outside corner, I'm going to trim it off. And flip to the other side. Awesome. So if all has gone according to plan, this is going to nest just under here. I'm gonna just hold on to your hats for a second. I'm gonna bring this down just a little bit to see if we can get that a little bit closer. Don't thunk. There we go. So this is going to attach underneath your little flap with a slight border around the outsides. And then this little strip here is going to go right here. So you can go ahead and glue those down. And guess what? That's really all there is to the flower pot portion of this card. The next little bit is decorating, and then we'll also create our tag, which is our flowers and the insert to this card. Now, I do not like to glue this flap together. I like to keep it all separate. That way, if the person does want to open it all the way up, they can. It also makes sure that your tag can flow and slide really nicely. But in order to kind of keep it together so that it doesn't flop open, that's where your ribbon is going to come into play. So I am just going to take this and wrap it around. And because my bird's going to be on that side here, so I'm going to put my bow on this one on the left side. You can center yours, you can put it on either side that you wish, but all I'm doing is tying a nice little bow. Like so. So I've just tied a little knot, and then I'll tie my little bow. My big fat fingers aren't usually very good at tying bows, but you just want it. It's functional as well as pretty, and you just want that kind of tucked off to the side like so. Take my scissors, I'm going to give it a little trim. And voila, there is our flower pot. The next piece we have to cut is our tag. Now with this one, I just use the same pattern paper that I used to decorate it with, or if you wish, you could do it on cards, or you can cut it out of cardstock and then put your pattern paper on top, which is what I think I'm going to do this time. So as per the measurements on the template, we want our piece of cardstock to be 2 3/4 of an inch wide by 4 3/4 of an inch tall. I find that actually is a little bit short if you want lots of nice pretty flowers, especially if they're big and dimensional like this. So I'm actually going to do mine 2 3/4 by 5 1/2. So again, I'm just going to grab a piece of cardstock. I think I already cut the 2 3/4. Yep. So 2 3/4 by 5 1/2. And if I'm going too fast, ladies, please interrupt me. I'm happy to repeat. I'm happy to slow down. And then I'm going to take, I'm also going to take a piece of pattern paper and put it on top. So in order to make it a little bit smaller and still see the border, I'm going to cut it at 2 1/2 by 5 1/4. So let's do the 5 1/4 first by 2 1/2. And that should nest nicely like so. Once again, feel free to round your corners. Feel free to create a nice little border, scalloped border at the bottom if you wish. I'm just going to leave mine as is for right now and just tack it all down.
Sheri,
Yes.
did you fasten down the sides of the flower pot? Like, did you glue those together?
I did not. I've left this completely open. The only thing that's holding this together is the ribbon.
Okay, thanks.
If you have really thin score tape and you really want to tack it down, you are more than welcome to. I often sometimes potentially run into trouble when I'm putting things in that if like my tape is too tight, it doesn't slide very nicely. So by not gluing it down, it helps give you a little bit more wiggle room in terms of sliding that tag in and out. But that's not to say that you can't. I just usually prefer not to. All right, so we now have our flower pot and we now have our tag. In order to put the flowers on the top, I find it easiest to tuck my tag inside, and then I can see where my flowers are going to go, because you don't want them too deep because you don't want them smushed inside the flower pot. But I also want to attach my bird. So with the 3D toppers, they come, it's kind of like that old school decoupage, paper toile. I don't even know the right terminology or how to pronounce it, but these little guys come with 3 layers. In the opening here. And if you saw my Lunch and Learn on Wednesday, you guys have already seen some of these guys. But this piece, this little birdie has 3 pieces. We've got this one here that has the full background. It's got an extra flower. On the one I did on the first had an extra little branch and that kind of thing. Then you're going to use your foam squares or your foam tape to layer him on top. And that just gives him some dimension. So this little guy pops to the background. And then we've got another flower that goes on top. So it gives some really nice dimension. I've done it on this one where I've just popped up the little flowers, but you can see how that gives dimension. Do I still have my cards? I do. So these are the cards that I made in our Lunch and Learn on Wednesday. So again, you can see that this bird has lots of layers on him to give some dimension, and this one's a bit more of a tropical kind of look to it. So these toppers are super fun for card making because you can give some dimension to your card without it being overpowering. Now the other advantage to the fact that there is 3 pieces in here is if I don't want to use all 3 pieces, like maybe I'll just keep this one like I did with the first one, keep that off to the side to use him by himself. And I'm going to attach this bird. I'm going to put him on an angle just so we've got some room here. So I'm just going to attach him right to my card. You could also attach more flowers if you had them. Just going to attach them to the flower pot here and then use some 3D foam to attach the flowers like so. And make sure that your flowers line up. So there, I got my little bird with the little flowers popped up, and now I'm going to take these flowers and cover the rest of my tag. Now that I've got room, now that I know where everything's going to go, all right, which of these guys am I going to use? Oh, these actually have, I've not used the Kaiser Craft flowers before, so these actually have a bit of a wire on the back. For what I'm doing, I don't really need them, so I'm just going to trim them off, but don't trim them too close to your It's not the stem, the flower part, just because you don't want it all to come unraveling. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off, fold that in, and using some liquid glue, I'm going to start attaching my flowers. So let's put him here. And let's take one of these lighter ones.
Are those flowers from the Amethyst collection?
They are, yes. Yeah. These are, so they're called Paper Blooms by Papercrafter, and you get 10 flowers. So there was 2 of these little pom-pom ones. There's 2 of these lighter ones, then 3 of those, and 3 of those. So you'll have lots left over. I don't think we're going to use all 10. And then I think I may also incorporate some of these little guys, which came from a Prima pack that I have, but it just gives you a little bit of a distinction in color. With this whole idea, you do want to try and have a variety of colors, so it does look like your flower pot is just bursting with color and with blooms. So I always like to start with the bigger ones because it's a whole lot easier to slide in smaller ones than to put your smaller ones down first and not have room left for your larger ones. It's the same with random stamping, which I think we did a couple of weeks ago. It's always best to start with your big ones and fill in with your small ones. So let's, okay, now that I've kind of got these as an anchor, I'm going to pull this out a little bit just so I don't end up sticking on top of my bird. So maybe I'll tuck him in here. So you can just do a double check, making sure it's all going to fit. Let's do another little bloom here. And this is just where you're going to have fun filling in some of the spaces, creating a beautiful bouquet. There. Can I fit a little guy in there? And so, you know what, you can use some of your foam squares too if that's easier to get. So I'm just putting a foam square on the back of my flower. Boop. Give it some height. And then if I slide that in, okay, this guy's not sticking very well. Let's see, what else can we fit in? Can we fit in? So behind the bird, I need them to be a little bit flatter just so that he doesn't bonk into anything. Finding I'm using some really scientific terms. Smoosh, bonk. Hope you guys are okay with that. And I'm going to put one last, you know what, let's do this guy. I haven't done him yet. And again, these ones that are a little bit more dimensional, you might want something a little stronger like a glue dot. I may have to go back later and add some more. I don't know if that's going to stay very well. But there you have it. You've got your flowers and blooms. Why can't I hit the slot? That now nest inside, and you can, I mean, I've got a few little blank spots. I could probably go in and tuck some more. In the original card, that flower set had little leaves as well, and that finishes things off nicely too. But there you have it. And then you can go, I've got an embellishment pack here that also came with the amethyst papers. There's all kinds of really great card making sentiments in this embellishment pack. I've just got them in my little chamois case here. Or you can stamp your sentiment on here or stamp it onto your card. I think what I'm going to do is I've got this little set of embellishment strips. I'm going to cut it off friendship down to amazing because that should fit nicely in there. So that can just nest. You know what? I'm going to trim the sides off a little bit too so we still see some of that paper. Just a smidge. And on the other side. This is going to sit there. For that inside tag at the bottom, you do want to keep it as flat as possible. Oh, look, I do have some more leaves, so I could tuck some leaves in here, but I'll do that later. You do want to keep this as flat as possible so that it'll fit inside your flower pot nicely, and I seem to have trouble getting that slot there. Get it down behind the bird. And I'm going to take this little sentiment here that says, "You are the best," and just tuck that under there as well. Like I said, you're welcome to stamp that if you would prefer. I like these little embellishment pieces. That navy really pops as well. And there you go. There is your flower pot card. And you can see how just adding the paper and all these pretty flowers gives it lots of great dimension, gives it a really pretty look. The person who receives this card is not going to want to throw it away because it is way too pretty. Like I said, you can also tuck a little gift card inside if you want this to be a gift card holder, but friendship beautiful, best friend, amazing. So there you have it, ladies. That is our Saturday flower pot project. Next week, we'll be back here at 1 o'clock. I'm going to teach you how to do a spinner card.
Woohoo!
So I will give you some directions and some supplies to have on hand. I will tell you one thing you do want to have on hand is dental floss. So if that's something you need to go hunting for, you now have a week's notice in order to do that. With this flower pot card, it's very easy to change the size. The idea just being that you want to have that little nested or little angled piece on either side. All righty. I'm going to let me stop recording. That way we can